Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of BTTH Rebirth of Emperor Yang episode number 83 based on novel. So let's start. However, this array is only limited to your pavilion master. Now the old man has lost his arm and wants to send many people at one time, but it is really difficult. Please find someone else for the rest. The voice fell. Luo Jin's face suddenly became a little ugly. Unexpectedly, even in such a situation, Mu Han still gave up his heart. Master Mu, where do you put the meeting of our pavilion master in this way? Who in the wild ancient city doesn't know that you can manipulate the array to transmit hundreds of people at one time, but what you say now is too far-fetched. Luo Jin frowned, his eyes narrowed and stared at Mu Han. With a swing of his right hand, he brushed the jade fan in his hand and closed it up with a click. His face looked a little ugly. I can't do what I want. I hope you can forgive me. If you think I ignored you, you can turn around and leave. Although I'm a disabled man now, as long as you don't mind, the old man doesn't care to see you leave. In the face of Luo Jin's low voice, Mu Han looked indifferent. Seeing this, Luo Jin couldn't help but frown. He didn't expect that even the leader of Union Pavilion could not make Mu Han obediently obey. It seems that Mu Han really hates Xiao Yang in front of him. Whoosh dash. Suddenly, a fierce wind broke out, and Luo Jin's face changed slightly. At the moment of lifting his eyes, he only saw that the North King had shot out and rushed to Mu Han. It's useless to talk nonsense with such a guy. Since he doesn't want to, he'll just kill him. While Xiao Yang's cold cry fell, the North King's iron fist also blasted at Mu Han. Bang! But the next moment, with a violent muffled sound, Bei Wang's iron fist stopped 1 meter away from Mu Han's body. An invisible terrible soul force is gathering a soul barrier in front of Mu Han to block all the punch of the North King. At the same time, the terrible soul pressure also made the North King's body hanging in the air sink slightly. Under the terrible soul power, even the North King's action was much slower. Xiao Yang could not help frowning when he saw this scene. He was a little surprised. Mu Han's improvement of soul power seemed to be much stronger than he imagined. The soul power in the later stage of the Realm of Unity is enough to make Mu Han no longer afraid of the North King. No wonder, although he looks plain today, his words are full of a tough attitude. I really think that scene 3 days ago will be staged again, Rock Owl. Mu Han slowly turned his body, and his cloudy eyes stared at Xiao Yang. His face was calm, but his tone changed, and suddenly became a lot more yin and fierce. When Mu Han's voice fell, the surging soul power surged out of his eyebrows. With Mu Han as the center, a huge soul storm swept in all directions. Bei Wang, the first to bear the brunt, was blown out by the power of terror while the soul storm swept through. Xiao Yang's face gradually became solemn. With this, Mu Han was afraid that he could compete with the ordinary 9-star and half emperor without losing the wind. Moreover, his own strength was a 9-star and half emperor. In this way, even if the North King and Xiao Jin fight together, it will be difficult to deal with Mu Han. Although there are some concerns in his heart, Xiao Yang still can't help but want to try. After all, even if Mu Han's soul power reaches the later stage of unification, he is still a 9-star and half emperor after all. Xiao Yang doesn't believe it. The 2 9-star and half emperors will be afraid of him. Well, will history repeat itself? It's not your has the final say, or did you ask them to agree? At the same time, the North King who was blasted off also set off together. They turned into 2 streamers and rushed away at Mu Han with a terrible wind. However, Mu Han gave a disdainful cold hum from his nose. When he held the crutch in his right hand and turned his wrist, the crutch in his hand suddenly became like a long sword. It swung flexibly in Mu Han's palm and quickly condensed a soul wind. At the next moment, when the North King and Xiao Jin attacked, Mu Han controlled the crutches in his hand. When the crutches were waved, 2 invisible chi suddenly burst out and severely bombarded the iron fists and dragon claws they had thrown forward. The seemingly ordinary 2 strong chi suddenly burst out at the moment of explosion, blocking Bei Wang and Xiao Jin for a moment. Although there is only a short moment, it is enough for strong people like Mu Han. The crutch in his hand quickly stabbed out. The smooth crutch turned into a long gun at the moment. The fierce momentum easily tore up the void. Under the blessing of fighting spirit, he severely clicked on the iron fist and dragon claw of Bei Wang and Xiao Jin. At the next moment, a golden light flashed in an instant, like a dazzling light, but before the North King and Xiao Jin moved, Mu Han's crutch was a little lighter again. Boom! The terrible fighting spirit light column instantly flew the North King and Xiao Jin into the sky. Under this attack, the North King's hard body surface cracked a crack with a wide fingernail cover. Although it recovered quickly, it can also be seen that Mu Han's strength has grown in these 3 days. Compared with the North King, Xiao Jin's flesh and blood looks a little more miserable. Not only the golden dragon scales on the body surface were shot down, but also a little blood came out of Xiao Jin's mouth. The red blood spilled in the void. At the same time, Xiao Yang, who saw all this below, quickly became gloomy. The ghouly people behind him were shocked to see Mu Han, who was in great contrast with his strength 3 days ago. It is difficult for souls in the realm of oneness to improve, which is related to the cohesion of soul beads. However, once they are improved, the power they show is also extremely shocking, which is the case in Mu Han at present. Mu Han was also quite satisfied with the blowback of Beiwang and Xiaojin. After all, he was not careless in the face of these 2 guys 3 days ago, let alone blowback like this. Rock Owl, is this your reliance? Mu Han stared at Xiao Yang with disdain. Now, with the powerful soul power, Beiwang and Xiaojin have been difficult to pose a threat to him, and he is not afraid of the group of people behind Xiao Yang. It's just a group of 8-star and half-emperors. For him, it's a group of black people. Of course, except Luo Jin. But at the moment, Luo Jin doesn't seem to have the intention to make a move, at least not yet. Luo Jin looked at Xiao Yang in the field, but his eyes showed a joking color. He could see that although Xiao Yang looked dignified, he still looked like an ancient well in the depths of his pupils. Like Mu Han at the moment, Xiao Yang is also absolutely sure of the result in the end. Ha ha ha. After a long time, Xiao Yang, who had a gloomy face, raised his slightly lowered head slowly, and sent out a burst of inexplicable cold laughter in his mouth. His dark eyes stared at Mu Han across from afar, sneering. It's really a 3-day leave and treat each other with admiration. As soon as Xiao Yang said this, the expression on Mu Han's face gradually solidified. From Xiao Yang's words that should have been praised, he heard a thick disdain and ridicule, which made Mu Han's anger rise, but also accompanied by a deep inexplicable chill. Ha ha ha. The wild laughter full of arrogance spread over the square. Everyone present heard a sense of confidence and disdain from the laughter. Mu Han, you're right. This is my reliance, but it's more than enough to deal with you. Xiao Yang stared at Mu Han and grinned coldly. Gaga, gaga. Mu Han couldn't help laughing when he heard the speech. He stared at Xiao Yang coldly and said with a harsh laugh. If I had put this 3 days ago, I would really have scruples about the puppets and animals, but today, they are even difficult to get close to me. Why do you think you can say more than enough? Hearing the speech, Xiao Yang couldn't help laughing. He grabbed a playful smile at the corners of his mouth, looked up at the North King and Xiao Jin in the sky, and suddenly shouted. Come back. The cry fell down, and the North King immediately fell down, and then was collected into the ring by Xiao Yang. Xiao Jin roared at Mu Han with unwilling eyes. Then he flew down, narrowed down and entrenched himself on Xiao Yang's shoulder. Seeing that Xiao Yang actually took back the North King and Xiao Jin, Mu Han immediately frowned. Xiao Yang's move made him feel a feeling of being despised. On his icy face, a surge of anger suddenly appeared. The surging soul power condensed a shapeless dragon scroll around Mu Han's body, and his breath rushed into the sky like a sword blade, with a breath like a rainbow. Don't overestimate yourself. Without that beast and puppet, you can't be my one-man general at all. Mu Lung snorted and turned his wrist. The crutch in his hand suddenly fell into the bluestone slab under his feet. With an invisible energy wave spreading, the whole square shook violently at the moment. When Xiao Yang heard the speech, he grinned coldly. A sarcastic smile was aroused at the corners of his mouth. His eyes stared at Mu Han jokingly and said coldly, I won't let them go because I don't need them to deal with you, but as for what you said, hee hee. Xiao Yang sneered. Mu Han couldn't help frowning when listening to Xiao Yang's words. Since just now, Xiao Yang seems to have been holding an extremely plain attitude, which makes Mu Han suspicious. At the same time, his eyes are constantly looking at Luo Jin. After all, the only person who can cause danger to him in the field at this time seems to be only him. But when he noticed the completely indifferent expression on Luo Jin's face, his frown could not help twisting into a ball. Seeing this, Xiao Yang smiled coldly and sneered at Mu Han. Oh, don't worry, if you really want to deal with you, you don't need him to do it. The voice fell, Xiao Yang clapped his palm 3 times, and the crisp sound spread over the square like clear thunder. At the same time, in everyone's suspicious eyes, among the few people behind Xiao Yang, Qingfeng's strong body walked out slowly. With each step of his landing, the whole square trembled slightly at the moment. With a distance of more than 10 feet, Qingfeng came to Xiao Yang's side. With a joking smile, he looked at Mu Han opposite. A pair of green pupils showed a light color of disdain. "Oh, don't you despise my reliance, then? Try again." Xiao Yang's mouth slowly aroused a sneer of disdain. Qingfeng came forward, not to mention that Mu Han is only a 9-star and a half emperor. Even if he is a real strong emperor, it is also difficult to compete with him. When Qingfeng walked out, Mu Han's eyes had already been fixed on Qingfeng. A pair of old eyes revealed a deep color of horror. When Mu Han looked at him, he couldn't see through the strength of the latter. This really shocked him. He can perfectly hide his breath under the soul exploration in the later stage of the state of oneness. If he wants to do this step, either the soul power is far higher than him and enters the level of perfection in the later stage of the state of oneness, or his own cultivation has stepped into the level that he can't easily imagine. Duty. At the thought of this, Mu Han's heart suddenly couldn't help but be surprised. A sense of fear rose slowly at the bottom of his heart, and a large cold sweat burst out on his forehead. Not to mention his age, as far as his strength is concerned, as long as he meets one of the above two, it is a terrorist force enough to take his life. Before that force, he will never have room to resist. Xiao Yang looked at Mu Han with a sneer, raised his right arm, pointed to Qingfeng and said with a sneer, "This is my reliance." The voice fell down, and Qingfeng on one side also cooperated very well and slightly released his power of fighting the emperor. Suddenly, in addition to a few people with Xiao Yang, both Mu Han in the field and the people outside the field immediately fell to the ground. Under this power, a large number of houses in the north of the city collapsed. At this moment, in everyone's heart, they all show a deep color of fear. In the face of this pressure, they all kneel on the ground, don't say to get up, even talking is impossible. In the middle of the square, Jiu Li looked at the strong man standing next to Xiao Yang with his mouth open and his heart full of horror. It's hard to imagine that this young-looking man's strength is so terrible that he has reached the level of fighting emperor. Duty. The real strong. Only at this level can we really be qualified to join the ranks of the strong in the mainland. If there is a watershed between Dozuan and Dosheng, it is even more so between half-emperor and Dudi. Although the semi-emperor is strong, it can only be called a strong one in terms of the whole continent. There has always been a saying in the mainland, you can become a semi-emperor, but you may not be able to become a fighting emperor. Perhaps you are gifted, but perhaps you will never be with the fighting emperor. Among them, part of the reason is from the cultivation talent, and the other part is because of the biggest difficulty in breaking through the fight against the emperor. Emperor robbery. Imperial robbery has always been regarded as the key to verifying a strong man. At the same time, it also divides the semi-emperor and the fighting emperor into more detailed ones. In a way, emperor robbery is the so-called watershed between half-emperors and fighting emperors. After the emperor's robbery, once nirvana, become a strong fighter who is revered by people on the mainland, and the future of cultivation is unlimited. On the contrary, if you can't survive the emperor's robbery, let alone be revered, you can't even keep your life. Well, just now it can really be called life and death. Wealth lies in heaven. Wheezing. Mu Han struggled to get up from the burst lime. He was embarrassed, but he didn't have time to take care of himself, so he quickly turned his frightened eyes to Xiao Yang. To be exact, it was Qingfeng on Xiao Yang's side. "I've seen your majesty." Although his mouth was still panting violently, Mu Han still forced himself to arch his hand at Qingfeng and bowed respectfully. When Qingfeng heard the speech, he couldn't help but show a joking smile at the corners of his mouth. He looked at Xiao Yang on the side, glanced at the corners of his mouth and said with a light smile, Hey, why, I'm just the reliance of the rock owl. Why are you so nervous about me? I'm upset. Just put your horse here, hum." Hearing Qingfeng's joking words, Mu Han could not help shaking his body. He suddenly burst into a cold sweat and wet a lot of clothes, but he opened his mouth in a hurry. His tone was respectful and did not dare to be slighted. Ha ha, the emperor joked. How dare you dare to be presumptuous in front of the emperor? What you said just now is just a moment of arrogance. A moment of eloquence. If there is any neglect, I hope the emperor can forgive me. No matter how old Qingfeng is, he can stand it. Oh. When Mu Han uttered words, Xiao Yang immediately sneered and said, Master Mu, why don't you try again? I promise I won't let you down. Mu Han was surprised when he heard the speech. He looked at Qingfeng in the twinkling of an eye, but he happened to see the latter rubbing his hands. It seemed that he was really ready to fight him. Seeing this scene, Mu Han was very frightened. He stared at Qingfeng with frightened eyes, shook his head and said, "No, no, no need." Seeing Mu Han's frightened appearance in front of Qingfeng, Xiao Yang smiled, looked at each other with Qingfeng, turned his eyes to Mu Han, put his hands around his chest, and said with a grin, "In that case, this array. No problem for many people. I'll start the array now." Hearing Xiao Yang's meaningful words, Mu Han hurriedly opened his mouth full of fear. Now he faced Xiao Yang again, but he didn't dare to refute anymore. "I'm kidding. The strong fighting emperor escorts him. What can he do with him, a 9-star and a half emperor? Once he is stubborn again, Xiao Yang will not joke and chat with him at that time." When Mu Han's voice fell, he didn't dare to hesitate. His heart moved, and the terrible soul power in his eyebrows suddenly poured out like a spring. Under Mu Han's control, he gradually disappeared into the earth under the whole square. Seeing this, Xiao Yang couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. He has seen the array, but it has always been the one with the array plate as the core. To display the array, you must first bless the array plate. As for the one like Mu Han at the moment, Xiao Yang really saw it for the first time. Therefore, he couldn't help raising a trace of curiosity in his heart. The heart read a move, and the surging soul power in the center of the eyebrows also gushed out of the body. Following Mu Han's appearance, Xiao Yang submerged the soul power into the earth under his feet. As soon as the soul power disappeared into the depths of the earth, under the exploration of Xiao Yang's soul, a mysterious array of about 10 feet spread out strange energy fluctuations in the depths of the earth. In the large array, 6 milky white spars are emitting a light milky white energy light, which is integrated into the large array. Coupled with Mu Han's soul power and fighting spirit, the mysterious large array can be operated just now. It's a spirit stone. It's commonly used to supply items when arranging high-order arrays. It's also the most primitive appearance of the spirit coin. However, because of its practical value, this spirit stone is generally only used for transmitting arrays, and rarely used in combat arrays. Seems to be aware of the fluctuation of Xiao Yang's soul. Qingfeng on one side explained to Xiao Yang in a flat tone. Hearing the speech, Xiao Yang couldn't help but pick his eyebrows. He was shocked. The strong man fighting the emperor was so terrible that he could clearly perceive the fluctuation of his soul in the same place. In this regard, Qingfeng smiled non-committally and didn't say much. Outside, with the array in Mu Han's hand, strange energy fluctuations spread rapidly around Mu Han. At the same time, the fighting spirit in his body also runs along the meridians, and finally flows into the earth below the square with the soul power. With the continuous influx of these energies, under the gaze of Xiao Yang, a mysterious array with iron painting and silver hook is gradually forming under their feet. Looking at its general appearance, it is completely consistent with the array that Xiao Yang Gang has just explored. The array that appears at the foot of Xiao Yang and others at the moment is an enlarged version of that array. When Mu Han raised his eyes with a heavy face, the big array under the feet of Xiao Yang and others also condensed successfully, and the bright golden light was reflected. Xiao Yang and others stood in the array. It seems that they will leave the southern region in an instant after the array is started. Seeing the completion of the formation, Xiao Yang also showed a smile at the corners of his mouth. He turned his head, looked at Luo Jin, smiled and said, "Oh, sure enough, it's better to use the most direct way in the face of Mu Han. On the contrary, it will be more and more troublesome." Hearing this undisguised words in Xiao Yang's mouth, Mu Han's old face couldn't help becoming iron blue. Luo Jin smiled non-committally when he heard the speech. He wanted to give Mu Han a chance, but unfortunately, he didn't accept it. At present, he can only blame himself for this outcome. Cough. "You guys, the array has been opened. Are you ready? The array can be started at any time." His face coughed twice, and Mu Han said in a slightly hoarse voice. Although the mood in the heart is extremely angry, Mu Han can only suppress the anger in the heart because Qingfeng is here. Hearing the speech, Xiao Yang sneered. Mu Han didn't want to start the array anyway. At the moment, with Qingfeng in charge, Mu Han was eager to start the array immediately and send away the plague god in front of him. "Oh, eat soft and afraid of hard." At the bottom of his heart, Xiao Yang sneered. He was too lazy to pay attention. He turned slowly and looked at Jiu Li and others behind him with warm eyes. When several people saw Xiao Yang's eyes, they were about to move their eyes away from Qingfeng and looked at Xiao Yang. His eyes swept slowly from the faces of several people in front of him. Xiao Yang's heart was also touched. His dark eyes showed sincere gratitude. "Everyone, thank you for your great help during your time in the wild ancient city. After a long time, Xiao Yang suddenly hugged his fist with both hands and bowed his hands sincerely to Jiu Li and others. At the same time, he also bent down to several people and saluted respectfully. When they saw this scene, their faces were also slightly stunned. When they returned to their senses, Jiu Li immediately laughed and said, "When did you become such a babe? It's not that you left and didn't come back. If you really want to thank us, don't forget to come back and see our old guys, that's enough, ha ha." Hearing Jiu Li's words, Xiao Yang smiled and showed a warm smile at the corners of his mouth. Then he stopped hesitating, turned his eyes to Luo Jin, and said with a smile, "So now, let's get ready to leave." Luo Jin nodded and smiled, his toes lightly touched the void, his body moved, and fell into the transmission array. Compared with Xiao Yang, Luo Jin's cloud-hidden pavilions are all over the mainland. It can be said that he has his home and place to stand wherever he goes. Naturally, he will not have so much hesitation like Xiao Yang. Hihi, okay, let's go too. If we continue, I'm really afraid you'll change your mind and not go to the western regions. Luo Jin smiled jokingly, and the two looked at Mu Han. Luo Jin sneered and said, "Hihi, in that case, please start the array." When the voice fell, Mu Han felt a little relieved and looked at Qingfeng, who had withdrawn from the array at the moment. There was still a palpitating expression on his old face, but it was much better than just now. As Xiao Yang entered the array, the others withdrew from the array one after another. Mu Han's heart moved. In the center of his eyebrows, the surging soul power poured out crazily again. This time, the mobilization of soul power was much more rapid than before. Obviously, Mu Han really didn't want to see Xiao Yang in front of him again. Xiao Yang stared at Mu Han indifferently. While the golden light rose at his feet, the corners of Xiao Yang's mouth also slowly aroused a dark smile. In the face of friends, he will treat others with sincerity and warmth, while in the face of enemies, especially those who hate him to the bone and want to get rid of him quickly, Xiao Yang will never show mercy. Mu Han tried to kill him several times to win the treasure. Now, they have become sworn enemies. Naturally, Xiao Yang can't let him go easily. Wherever he can suffer losses, Xiao Yang won't be polite. When the bodies of Xiao Yang and Luo Jin disappeared in the light array, Mu Han also noticed the sneer hanging at the corner of Xiao Yang's mouth. Immediately, the look on his face could not help but coagulate slightly, and his heart felt bad. His eyes hurriedly swept to Qingfeng in horror, but he saw that the latter had left on his own, leaving only to stare at Jiu Li and his party who left the southern region with Xiao Yang and Luo Jin. Seeing this scene, Mu Han could not help but frown slightly. However, before he thought carefully, his face suddenly changed sharply, and a sharp pain that was almost unbearable quickly spread from the depths of his soul. Mu Han clenched his teeth, suddenly tightened his nerves and revealed his green tendons. A moment later, Mu Han suddenly looked up to the sky and uttered a violent roar mixed with pain. "Ah, Rock Owl, I will be at odds with you in this life." While Mu Han looked up at the sky and roared, Xiao Yang, who had disappeared from the transmission array, slowly raised a sneer at the corners of his mouth, and the palm under his sleeve robe slowly stretched out. In the center of his palm, a snow-white ring was lying quietly and attacking. My heart moved, and the surging terrible soul power suddenly surged out and disappeared into the ring in the palm of my hand. This ring is the ring Mu Han originally wore on his finger. However, while Qingfeng was crushed by the Emperor, Qingfeng secretly took him off Mu Han's hand, and quietly covered up his connection with Mu Han with the soul power of the Emperor. In addition, Mu Han's whole mind was on Qingfeng, so he didn't pay attention to this little detail. Xiao Yang has no choice but to accept the precepts. Mu Han's soul power has set foot in the realm of unity. In the later stage, it is not easy for him to compare. However, fortunately, there was an old monster like Guyo in Xiao Yang's body. Under his terrible strength, even the soul power in the later stage of the return to one territory was like nothing in front of him. However, with one blow, he easily erased the soul imprint left by Mu Han. This is the reason why Mu Han is suddenly angry. After erasing the original soul mark on Naji, Xiao Yang was not in a hurry to explore it, but after leaving his own soul mark on it, he put it on his hand. It's not that Xiao Yang doesn't care about the things in Naji. This is a 9-star and half-emperor's Naji. Even if the ordinary fighting emperor sees it, he will never let it go. Xiao Yang naturally won't be indifferent. Just now, the destination of his trip is Western regions. The next moment, with a burst of golden light shining, Xiao Yang and Luo Jin narrowed their eyes and put the dazzling golden light on a square that can accommodate nearly 10,000 people. When the golden light dispersed, Xiao Yang's eyes slowly swept across the square and looked at the crowd on the square. Among Xiao Yang's spotless eyes, he couldn't help but set off a ripple. Among these people present, nearly half of them have the strength of more than half-emperor. This number is several times that of the strong half-emperor in the wild ancient city. This is the Western region. Looking at the prosperous city in front of him, Xiao Yang slowly put on a smile at the corners of his mouth, and a sense of sigh came into his heart. I don't know what level his strength can be raised in the Western regions. When Xiao Yang arrived in the Western regions, at this moment, at the junction of the Central region and the Southern region, a heavenly energy barrier was separating the two regions. The barrier is so wide that you can't see the edge at a glance. The golden barrier is like a city wall. It is indestructible. Even in front of this energy barrier, even if it is as strong as fighting emperor, it can't shake it. At this moment, an old man who looked a little sloppy all over in the Central region was flying slowly to the border with a lazy face. The old man looked at the indestructible border in the eyes of ordinary people, but a joking smile slowly appeared at the corners of his mouth. The palm full of traces of years slowly stretched out from under the sleeve robe. The old man's two fingers were close together, and his fingertips slowly stroked over the golden barrier in front of him, feeling the eternal power on it, but the old man couldn't help sneering. State boundary, hehe, I haven't touched it for many years, but it's the only place close to the mainland border. I haven't been to the mainland border for many years, hehe. The border in front of the old man with a smile and a look of memory in his eyes. At the beginning, I was just a boy returning to the source territory. I have been in such a position for so many years. However, you have broken the barrier for thousands of years, and you still have so much power. Hehe, it can be regarded as that things are right and people are wrong. After a low sigh, the old man's heart moved. The two fingers falling on the barrier in front of him gradually covered with a layer of fire-red energy. This energy is the source gas. As the source gas on the old man's fingers became more and more rich, a thick breath also spread from it. Under this breath, there were circles of shallow spatial ripples in the surrounding void. Hehe, the state border is broken. With a slight smile, the old man's face looked sharp and sharp. At the moment when the words broke out in his mouth, the close fingers suddenly pricked out. While the source gas on the fingers exploded, a terrible energy fluctuation swept away. Bang! With a violent bang, the golden energy barrier in front of the old man suddenly burst into a gap of tens of feet. Seeing this, the old man smiled, then moved and crossed the barrier to the sky. Nanyu, I don't know if that guy will be here. It's all over the mainland. Where can I find such a person? Alas! While crossing the border, the old man couldn't help sighing, completely without the leisurely look when he just left the family. The old man was sent by the elder of Xiao family to look for Xiao Yang. Xiao Mingyuan. He originally thought that with his own ability, it was not difficult to find a guy who had just broken through the half-emperor and came to Yuanwu continent, but the fact was not as simple as he imagined. Since he left the family and traveled all over the central region, he could not find the person he was looking for. 1 month ago, he received another urging from the family elder, which made him a little impatient. At the same time, he turned directly to the southern region. The southern region is the only place to enter the middle region. Only here can he have a transmission array to the middle region. He believes that if the boy wants to enter the middle region, he must come here first. In this way, it greatly increases his chances of finding the man. But unfortunately, he never thought that when he came to the southern region, Xiao Yang also happened to embark on the road of the western region. Angry continent. Today's Duki mainland, although Yang Emperor Xiao Yan has left, this has not changed the original rules of the mainland, the survival of the strong. Cultivation continues, but what is different from the past is that with the Yang Emperor, everyone on the mainland seems to be a little persistent in cultivation, and the direct result of doing so is that the average strength of the whole continent is several times stronger than in the past. When Xiao Yang set foot in the western regions, everything that seemed peaceful outside in a remote valley in the northwest of Duki continent, but once he went deep, there was a grey-black poisonous fog in the core of the valley. The appearance of the poisonous fog suddenly changed the atmosphere of the small valley, but fortunately, because of the remote terrain, no one came here, and some small animals just walked around the periphery of the valley. Therefore, they will not be infected by the poisonous fog. At the moment, in the deepest part of the poison fog, there is a beautiful figure sitting at the core of the poison fog. In front of her, there was a coffin that was corrupted by the poison gas, from which the strong poison gas continued to spread, and then it was absorbed by the beautiful woman. After some refining, it became a part of her strength, and the strength of the woman became more and more powerful under such continuous absorption and refining. Even more powerful, it has broken through the peak level in the later stage of the 9-star dual saint and rushed straight to the half-emperor. However, the impact time seemed to be a little long ago. Although the poison gas was continuously inhaled into her body, the breakthrough in thinking did not appear. And this woman has never been anxious. She can practice to this level. She knows that it is not easy to practice. Therefore, the more she approaches the last moment of breakthrough, the more she can't be anxious. This woman is the one who did everything for Xiao Yan and was even willing to take her life. This video will end here.